Hi everyone! So I've done quite a number of miniature paintings. I think all up I've done about 107, and a video has just come out from a YouTuber that I've watched quite a lot, and I didn't realize until I watched it that I thought, hey, I've done the same thing. So it's Leslie Strauss, and I painted 100 tiny paintings in a year. Tiny paintings is something I have always done. I've done it for a few years now. But since traveling, I have gone super tiny, which are these very tiny. They're about 2.5 by 3.5 centimeters, or 1.25 inch by 2 inches. And as she was going through them, I thought, hey, I have just as many. I may as well do the same kind of video. Just going through the thoughts that I had and how the landscapes have played out, and some of the things that I've started to incorporate and some of the things that I've started to do since doing these miniature landscapes. Now, a lot have sold already because I didn't think to keep them. They were listed on my website. They were the tiny treasures. They were only available for a couple of months, and I updated them as I was doing them. They're no longer available because I have a show that I'm doing a little bit later. But I thought I'd go through and do some of the walkthroughs of some of the scenes that I had, just so you can have a look. So we have some here, which obviously most of them, they have the gold in them. And as I was looking through a lot of these minis, I thought, oh, they're very similar, but that is my style. And the colors are also very similar. I do a lot of the same kind of colors. So I thought that was very interesting too, because it was the first time I actually laid them all out together on their own. So I was quite interested to see, and I was happy to see how it all played out and everything. So as you can see, I started experimenting with these minis with foliage a little bit more than just the regular scenes where I normally have trees. And you can see all these little ones, they have like the galaxy or the sparkle with it, and I really like that. You can see that the trees, they are generally the kind of trees that I like to paint, but I did notice in some of them that I would go through and I would experiment a little bit more, because I was experimenting with different paints as well, and that also helped to experiment with the types of foliage that I was painting. Some of the misty, moody things that came out of this were just so lovely. I really liked how the paint spread. I liked how it gave that very... The place I'm from in Tasmania in Australia, we do have all 4 seasons. And I really like during the winter time how the mist is quite heavy, and it creates a lot of atmosphere. And I was really happy to be able to replicate that in these miniature paintings. But as you can see, there are some that hold their own. They have no sparkle or gimmick, I guess, to make them more interesting, because they are a complete scene on their own. But I was interested in seeing like the difference of colors and also playing with different parts of the composition. This, I had gotten some more paint, which I really loved, and that was interesting to look at as well. I started experimenting too with having the foreground come from above instead of below, which is what I normally do in the compositions. So I started playing with the foreground a little bit more and changing the composition a little bit, and I really like the results, so I think I'll do that a little bit more. I house all of my minis in this beautiful box that I got at a thrift store. I love the little brass inlays, and I like that it's not perfect. I think that's a lot of things. I like that it looks hand carved to me. Whether it is or not, I don't know. I don't know where it's from. I don't know how old it is or anything like that. So I house my little minis in there, and any extra paints. This one as well, I really liked the abstract nature of it, and I liked how it turned out to be quite a scene. So with this section, you can see that there's quite a bit of difference in the colors, which is a good thing too. So I definitely went on a pink theme, and you can see that there are some beautiful colors and textures in some of these, which I really love. And some of them I really like the simplicity as well. I like the simplicity that even though they're the same color palette, they've got really different depths and different moods. And I love that little pop of sparkle of the gold and everything like that. All the materials that I use, they're linked in the description below, so you can have a look at that. So a lot of these were experiments with color, experiments with brush strokes and things like that. Some of them, they became something all on their own, something very different. I was experimenting with different ways light hits different sections. I was experimenting with ways to use the brush in a way that was different than before, and that resulted in some of these more abstract pieces, which I really like. This one in particular, I really like this one. I love how there's this kind of galaxy aurora thing happening in the sky, but then these very harsh, like vertical brush strokes. I really enjoyed doing that. That was a lot of fun. I also wanted to experiment with some like simple gradients and things like that. That was good. And also getting back into some of the more abstract things that I've been doing lately. So I do have a course on the miniature landscapes. It's linked below, the miniature watercolor course for beginners. And we go through these landscapes, but also abstract things as well. In this one here, there was a slightly different composition, which was quite nice. I enjoyed that. And it looks more like a snow scene. And then this one here, I like how the moon kind of rises over the horizon and that you can see that reflection down in the lake as well. These colors, I always seem to come back to these very fiery, intense orange and reds, and then this very dark contrasting color. I tend to use a mixture of green and orange with these, and even though it doesn't look like it, this is a green pigment at the bottom and a red pigment mixed in. So it's quite nice to see all these together. There's a couple of abstract ones that I just really enjoy doing these. I love the effect that that has in the end. So you know too, I love experimenting with pen and ink, and a lot of my abstracts start out with that black pen ink kind of vibe. And I saw another artist, I actually bought some of his work, and I really liked how he used just black and white, because it's been something that I've done ever since the start and I've really enjoyed it. But I thought it was cute to try and render some of the abstract things or the abstract florals that I make in the miniatures. And this was a good little experiment for me because I draw all the time. The abstracts is something that's very much a part of my practice and I really enjoy it. And so having these black and white, little drawings, it was just really nice to do and get back into creating something without the brush for the first time. And I like how it's not 100% perfect. I like how there's like little gaps between where I've lifted the pen or something like that. And that's something that I really enjoy. So that's been a lot of fun experimenting with this and then getting kind of muscle memory back with some of the florals that I used to do. Some of these have my favorite paintings of the tiny paintings of all time. This one was a breakthrough for me when I changed the foreground into the gold paint, and it really pops. It's something that's really lovely and I enjoy. This one as well, it's a similar scene, but having that person in a boat, I don't usually draw boats, I don't usually like that kind of artwork, but having that little feature, it's just something about it. It just reminded me of, times and places in my life, and I just really liked it. But the two that really took my breath away were the abstracts, these two here. And these were born from mistakes. Mistakes with how much water was on the paper and what colors I was using. This actually originally started out as a landscape and I didn't video it. Usually I video most of the tiny treasures that I do, but for some reason, sometimes I do this when I'm watching TV or a show or something like that, and I think when I'm not concentrating and I'm just letting it flow, that's when things really turn out really nice. And so someone commented, this feels like fabric, it feels like something textured like velvet or something like that, and so I really agree with that. This one I really love because there's something like another element that I don't normally include, which is the birds in the sky. And for some reason, I feel like that they just really set off that little scene there, which is really lovely. For a while there, I was experimenting with colors I don't normally use, which is the earth colors. And I was inspired by my cutting board, actually. I'll try and pop a photo up that shows you all the different minis that I did inspired by the colors in the cutting board. And they turned out really nicely as well. This is playing a little bit more with gradients and having that sparkle integrated into the paint as well. That was a lot of fun. This is such a different style than what I'm used to in terms of color choices. It's very dark and moody for me, almost kind of gothic dark, which is something that I don't really love. I do like dark colors, very bright, bold, saturated colors, but there's just too much heaviness in this one for me. But at the same time, I feel like it really works for this scene. This is another example of testing out the limits of a brush and using kind of those spiky, scratchy textures to try and get some movement and to get some scenes in there. Again, we have a couple of surprises and new experiments, as we can see in here. This one I started to play with trees and how they integrated into a scene, which is something again that I don't normally do. Because it's like not my favorite medium to paint, probably because I'm not 100% sure on how to render a tree correctly. So that just will take more practice, but I'm interested in the composition and how these turned out. I also experimented with a couple of night scenes in different ways. And again, I wanted to capture that time just as the sun has gone below the horizon, but it's not quite night yet. So that dusk feeling, I really enjoy that time of the evening. It's very quiet. It's when the birds go to rest and everything kind of settles in for the night to come. So I like how these have been captured in these tiny paintings. This one, I particularly like the composition of this one. I like how there's that emptiness in the sky, and I like that feeling that we're in the woods. More experiments. And as I'm going through these, I'm definitely seeing a very strong theme of colors. I definitely tend to go for very similar colors in my work, and it's very obvious to me once I lay everything out. Again, experimenting with shadows, lights, mountains, snow-capped mountains, things like that. So in this lot, there are so many that are very interesting to me, again from a composition perspective, but again in this spread you can kind of see the color palettes that I tend to use more often than not. I definitely go for pinks and purples, but blues and greens definitely have their own place in there. This one I loved because of, again, the composition of it. It feels like you're in the forest, and then that tiny little glint of a moon, that was just perfect for me. This one as well, I want to try and start painting mountains far away, but have that definition where you can see the ridges in it and you can see the light reflecting. So this was experimenting with that little tactic as well. Again, this is one of my favorites. This was the first experiment in trying to get textures out of the brush that I use. And I love that it's very subtle, but it feels very painterly, but it's still quite small. That is one of my favorites, and I'm glad it's still with me. Another one that the sister to this one has already sold. I love the simplicity of this. To me, there is just so much mood and movement and feeling in this. And maybe it was just a reflection of how I felt at the time as well, but the sister one is in dark maroons and pinks, and it was just such a beautiful thing to paint. It's so nice to paint. And this is kind of a similar idea. I'm tending to go for the simple ones now as well, and so that's really cool to watch and to see how they're developing and coming together. More traditional kind of landscape with the big sky, and that's something I noticed being in Tasmania in Australia. I think it's too due to the population and the amount of land that's available. Sometimes you can go driving through the Midlands or the Highlands, and just the expanse of sky in relation to the landscape that's around you. The landscape feels so small and insignificant, and that big sky is just incredible. Here's the combination of the abstract with the landscape. It's a method I do like doing, and I haven't done it for a while, and I'm trying to reintroduce it into some of my later work because I do like that abstract element in my work if I can keep it in there. This one, I didn't have any tape, and this is probably one of the very few that I haven't taped up, and so it's got quite an organic shape to it, which is quite nice. Again, with experiments in reflections of my cutting board, they were a lot of fun as well. So at the moment, these tiny treasures, they aren't available because I have a show coming up in April that some of them will be on display there. So after that and everything is done and dusted, then we can put them back on display. But I hope you enjoy this little tour of some of the tiny treasures that I have created over the past few months. These have all been done literally, I think, in the past 5 months. I started going tiny, even tinier than my normal block minis. And so that's been a lot of fun. So thank you for coming along for the ride, and we'll see you in the next video.